When one begins to awaken, something very curious happens. You do not suddenly glow with halos or walk 2 inches above the ground. No, it is far subtler than that. You begin, in a peculiar way. Now, I don't mean that you disappear in a puff of smoke or dissolve like a magician's trick. I mean that the person the world thought you were, the image, the social reflection, begins to fade. It is as though the photograph everyone kept of you in their mind starts to lose its color, and one day, when they look again, there's only the faint outline left. You see, the world doesn't actually meet you. It meets what you present, your name, your face, your mannerisms, the agreeable collection of responses you've rehearsed since childhood. This is what society trades with. Images, roles, masks, the businessman, the artist, the mother, the rebel, all masks, all beautifully convincing parts in a great masquerade. And when you start to wake up, you begin to notice the mask itching on your face. You feel it doesn't quite fit anymore. You laugh when people expect you to play your old role, and they find this laughter unsettling because the play must go on, and you have just dropped your lines. So people drift away. Invitations slow down. The conversation that once flowed so easily now feels like reading a script from a play you no longer believe in. And you wonder, have I done something wrong? No, you've simply stopped auditioning. You've seen through the performance, and the other actors don't quite know how to respond when one of their own steps off the stage. You've noticed that applause is only another kind of echo, and you no longer need it to know that you exist. Now, this vanishing can feel lonely at first. After all, the costume you wore was warm and familiar. You may even try to put it back on to smile as before, to chatter about the weather, to squeeze yourself again into the pattern of expectation. But it no longer sticks. The glue of illusion has dried. You can still play the game, of course. But now you know it is a game. The dice are hollow, the board imaginary, the rules invented for fun. Yet everyone around you takes it so terribly seriously, as if the fate of eternity depends on a promotion, a like, or a polite opinion. And when you don't take it seriously anymore, you seem to vanish, not because you have withdrawn from life, but because you have stepped behind the curtain and discovered that the stage was never real in the first place. So the first sign of awakening is not brilliance or enlightenment or cosmic fireworks. It is disappearance. The world stops recognizing you because the world can only recognize reflections, and you have become transparent. It's a strange kind of freedom. You are still here, breathing, laughing, paying your bills perhaps, but something fundamental has changed. You're no longer trapped inside the costume. You're watching the play unfold, smiling, because now you know who's behind the mask, and that the actor and the stage are one and the same. When we speak of awakening, it's very easy to imagine some grand, thunderous event, lightning bolts of realization, trumpets of cosmic truth. But most awakenings arrive quietly. They come like dawn, not explosion. The darkness does not fight the light. It simply becomes transparent. And so it is with the mask. The mask doesn't fall with a crash. It simply fades, like mist dissolving as the morning sun rises. You begin to notice that what you once called yourself is mostly habit, a collection of patterns, preferences, and rehearsed responses. I'm the kind of person who, you used to say. But now, when those words rise, they feel strange in your mouth. You are no longer sure there is such a kind of person at all. The word persona comes from the ancient Greek for mask, the mask through which the actor's voice would sound in the amphitheater. And in that great play we call society, everyone has a mask. It's the thing through which you speak to others, the part that smiles and shakes hands and says, "Good morning, how are you?" even when your heart is elsewhere. But when the mask begins to crack, when awakening loosens the glue that holds it to your face, You find that you can't keep it on so tightly anymore. It begins to slip in conversations, to tilt during the rituals of small talk. You find yourself saying less and feeling more. You laugh in the middle of serious discussions. You pause where others rush to fill the silence. This makes people nervous. They sense that something in you no longer obeys the rules of the play. And since they are still playing their parts with utter conviction, your stillness looks suspicious, perhaps even dangerous. Yet, the mask isn't evil. It was never your enemy. It served a purpose. It allowed you to participate in the world, to communicate, to survive among other masks. The tragedy was only that you thought the mask was you. You see, this is the great misunderstanding of human life. We take the costume for the body, the role for the soul. We forget that the actor always existed before the play began and will remain when the curtain falls. When you finally glimpse this, that you were never the name on the poster, never the character in the script, something marvelous happens. A tremendous lightness enters your being. You no longer have to defend an image, no longer have to maintain the performance. You can simply be, but to those still wearing their masks, your simplicity feels foreign. They will call you aloof, detached, or perhaps lazy. They will say, "What happened to you? You used to be so motivated, so passionate." What they mean is, you used to play the same game as we do, and you smile, not out of superiority, but out of understanding. Because now you see the beauty of the masquerade itself. You see that every mask, every role, every identity is a dance of divine imagination. And you, who thought you were just one dancer, discover that you are the whole rhythm of the dance. So when the mask fades, don't mourn it. Bow to it. It carried you as far as it could. It was never false, only partial. The tragedy is not in losing the mask. It's in refusing to outgrow it. Now you are face to face with your own face, not the one in the mirror, but the one that existed before mirrors were made. That is the beginning of true invisibility and the first breath of real freedom. When the mask falls away, when the chatter of identity fades into the background, something remarkable begins to dawn upon you: silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence that sings. This is not the silence that merely lacks words or sound. It is the silence out of which all sounds arise. You start to notice it everywhere, between sentences, behind laughter, even underneath the hum of traffic. It is the space that holds the world together. And for perhaps the first time, you realize that you are not missing. You are that space itself, the silence behind the thoughts, the witness behind the story, the still point around which the dance spins. You have not vanished, you have become the quiet in which everything else appears. People, of course, mistake this for detachment. They think silence means withdrawal, that quiet means emptiness. They look at you and say, "You're so distant now." But what they're really sensing is that you no longer project the old noise, the need to be seen, the constant reaching for validation, the hum of unfinished wanting. You've simply turned down the volume of your performance. And in the quiet, you hear the music of existence playing all by itself. You realize that life doesn't need your commentary to be magnificent. It already is. Now, this quietness has a strange effect on others. Some will be drawn to it without knowing why. They'll say, "There's something peaceful about you." They feel a gravity, a kind of magnetism, not because you're imposing yourself, but precisely because you are not. Like a deep lake that draws the gaze, your stillness invites others to see their own reflection. Others, though, will find it unbearable. They will try to stir you, to provoke reaction, to make you engage again in the game of noise. Silence, to the restless mind, feels like an accusation. It says nothing, yet reveals everything. Alan Watts would often say that silence is the fundamental sound of the universe. All the stars, all the galaxies, All the motion of life happens in an immense quiet. The noise of creation is only a ripple across infinite stillness. When you begin to live from that stillness, you are no longer trying to make waves, you are the ocean itself. So this is why the awakened often seem invisible. Their energy no longer screams, it whispers. They no longer compete for the world's attention, because they have discovered something infinitely more intimate, attention itself. You can feel this silence even in the presence of someone who has found it. Their eyes do not grasp, their words do not chase. You can sense that they could speak or remain mute, and it would make no difference. Their presence speaks louder than sound. And you may notice something curious. When you stop demanding to be seen, you begin to see. The whole world shines again. You hear the birds not as background, but as symphony. The wind not as emptiness, but as breath. You see people not as roles, but as waves of the same ocean. So do not fear your quietness. It is not death, it is depth. The disappearance you feel is the dissolving of boundaries, the melting of the little me into the vastness that was always here. When you stop trying to echo, you become resonance itself. And in that resonance, you find that the less you try to be noticed, the more luminous your presence becomes. Silence is not the absence of self, it is the self unveiled. When silence begins to take root, the scaffolding of your identity starts to tremble. What you once called my life reveals itself to be a rather elaborate construction, a delicate architecture of roles, labels, and expectations. And one by one, those structures begin to loosen. You notice that the job title you guarded so fiercely now feels strangely hollow. The opinions that once set your blood on fire lose their heat. The endless urge to justify yourself, to prove you are right, worthy, important, melts like snow under a morning sun. It is not that you have become indifferent. It is that you have remembered there was never anyone who needed defending in the first place. Society is a magnificent play, but a dangerous one for those who forget it's a play. We create characters, the achiever, the artist, the lover, the victim, and then we confuse the costume for our skin. When the performance consumes the performer, we call it a career. When the applause becomes our heartbeat, we call it success. But awakening is the moment you hear the orchestra stop and realize the applause was only thunder made by your own mind. This can be disorienting. The ego is a marvelous storyteller, and when the plot dissolves, it feels like death. But it's not death. It's birth without anesthesia, the labor of consciousness remembering itself. You start to feel lighter, not because life has lost its weight, but because you've stopped carrying what was never yours to hold. The need to maintain an image, to impress, to keep up with the parade, it all begins to look rather absurd. You can still march if you wish, but now you know the drumbeat is optional. And here is the beautiful paradox. When you stop pretending, the roles don't vanish, they become radiant. The teacher teaches more freely when he stops trying to be a teacher. The lover loves more deeply when she stops trying to be a good partner. The parent nurtures best when they no longer perform parenthood, but simply care spontaneously, as life itself expressing tenderness. You see, the problem was never in playing the roles, it was in believing you were them. The great cosmic joke is that the universe is both actor and audience, mask and face, stage and spotlight. You are not trapped in the performance. You are the theater in which it unfolds. So when your old identities collapse, don't rush to rebuild them. Don't scramble to glue the mask back on. Let the ruins stand. Sit among them. Watch how, without effort, a truer way of being emerges, a playfulness without pretense. Now you can enter any role like a dancer, stepping into rhythm fully, passionately, but never forgetting the music. You can be the worker, the friend, the child, the sage, and yet behind every gesture, the quiet laughter of the eternal actor remains. This is why the awakened often confuse the busy world. They seem unpredictable, sometimes silent, sometimes full of laughter, sometimes deeply engaged, sometimes withdrawn, because they no longer cling to a single mask. They can wear them all lightly, like clouds changing shape. To live this way is not to reject the world, but to redeem it, to turn every act into art, every word into play, every breath into participation without bondage. So when your roles begin to collapse, don't mourn the end of certainty. Celebrate the beginning of fluidity. You've not lost identity. You've discovered infinity. When the roles collapse and the mask dissolves, the world begins to look at you with puzzled eyes. Those who once knew you best will tilt their heads, as if trying to remember where they've seen your face before. They will say, "You've changed," and you'll know they are right, though you may not be able to explain what has changed or why. Because how do you explain that you are no longer interested in defending a ghost? That the self they used to speak to, the one full of ambitions, plans, and grievances, has quietly retired, leaving only a kind of luminous presence behind. To the unawakened, this feels like absence. To those still chasing meaning through noise, silence looks like indifference. They will call you distant, detached, or unmotivated, not realizing that you are simply resting in the very center of being. It is not arrogance that keeps you quiet. It is understanding. You have discovered that there's nothing to convince anyone of, because everyone, in their own way, is already it. You've stopped trying to pull others into awakening, for you've seen that they are only dreaming. They're part of the dream, and dreams cannot be forced awake. So the world misunderstands, as it always has, misunderstood its poets, its mystics, its saints. People who walk too close to the truth always appear a little out of rhythm to those still dancing to the old tune. You see, awakening does not make you special. It makes you simple. And simplicity has always been mistaken for lack. People ask, "What are you doing with your life now?" expecting a new project, a new mission, a new cause. And when you say, "I am simply being," they frown, as if you've offered them an empty box. But that box is full of sky, full of stillness, full of awareness. It is the same fullness that makes the flower bloom and the stars burn, but to the busy mind, it looks like nothing at all. You begin to understand why the sages often smiled instead of explaining. Why Lao Tzu wrote, "Those who know do not speak." Not because there is nothing to say, but because the truth cannot be said without turning into something else. Words are like fingers pointing at the moon. The moment you mistake the finger for the light, you lose the wonder. So you stop trying to be understood, and in that stopping, a new peace arises. You no longer need to correct anyone's opinion of you. If they think you have fallen behind, you let them pass. If they think you are lost, you let them lead. The river does not argue with the stone. It simply flows around it. This is the secret beauty of invisibility. When you cease striving to be known, you discover a freedom beyond measure. For to be known is to be limited, to be defined, labeled, and fixed in the mind of another. But to be unknown, that is to be infinite. And here lies the gentle paradox. In becoming invisible, you do not vanish from life. You merge with it. You become the quiet breeze that moves the leaves, the pause between laughter, the presence behind eyes. You are felt, not seen, known, not recognized. And those who are ready, those who have begun to hear the music behind the noise, will sense it. They will be drawn to you, not because you shine brighter, but because your stillness mirrors their own forgotten depth. So don't fear being misunderstood. It is the inevitable side effect of becoming real. You are no longer performing in their play, you are writing your own script in invisible ink. There is a strange blessing hidden in becoming invisible. You see, when you are no longer busy holding up a self for the world to admire, an extraordinary lightness comes over you. You no longer have to keep your story straight, because you have discovered you were never the storyteller. Life is telling itself through you, and that realization is the beginning of freedom. Freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. It is the quiet joy of no longer needing to become anything at all. You are free when there is nothing left to prove. When you can move through the world without leaving a trail of explanation behind you. When you were visible in the social sense, you were trapped in reflection. Every word was a mirror. Every gesture an advertisement of who you thought you were. Even your kindness, your generosity, your wisdom were all, in subtle ways, efforts to be seen as kind, generous, and wise. It's exhausting, isn't it? Carrying the weight of your own reputation. But when that burden drops, you walk through life like wind through trees felt, but unseen. You no longer have to keep the branches arranged. You rustle for the sheer joy of movement. People may ask, "Don't you care what others think anymore?" And you'll smile, not from pride, but because you've discovered that others' thoughts are just more clouds passing in the same vast sky that you are. They may obscure you for a moment, but they cannot touch your space. This is the art of true anonymity, not hiding from the world, but ceasing to divide yourself from it. You are no longer the figure in the painting. You are the canvas itself. Everything moves across you, yet you remain unstained. And then something wonderful happens, because you are no longer trying to be impressive. Everything you do begins to carry the fragrance of authenticity. Your words become simple. Your actions effortless. You start to act out of curiosity rather than obligation. You work because work appears. You rest because rest calls. You love because love flows. All without the heavy I hovering above, claiming authorship. Invisibility reveals the paradox that Watts loved to point out, that the less you try to be someone, the more radiant you become. It's the difference between the dancer who tries to impress and the one who simply dances. The latter disappears into movement, and we call it grace. Now, this kind of freedom cannot be bought or taught. It is not the freedom of rebellion, for rebellion is still chained to what it opposes. It is the freedom of transparency, of being a window rather than a wall. The wind blows through. The sunlight passes. Nothing is held. To live this way is to rediscover play. You can slip in and out of society's games, not because you're cynical, but because you finally understand the rules were never real. You can join in, laugh, withdraw, and return, all without losing yourself. And so, invisibility, which once felt like exile, becomes your sanctuary. You realize you were never banished. You simply stepped out of the spotlight and found the universe humming quietly backstage. You are not missing from the world. You are now inside it completely. And in that wholeness, the idea of freedom itself fades, because there is no longer anyone left to be bound. Eventually, every hermit must walk back into the village. The purpose of solitude, after all, is not to stay away forever, but to remember who you are when you return. And so, the journey of awakening, this quiet vanishing, this melting of identity leads not to a mountain cave, but right back into the marketplace of life. But this time, something is different. You walk through the same streets, hear the same noise, meet the same faces, and yet none of it clings to you. The dust of the world no longer settles, because there's no roughness left for it to stick to. You are smooth now like a mirror, reflecting whatever appears, untouched by what it reflects. You can laugh again, play again, fall in love again, but now it's all play. You no longer mistake the costume for your skin. You can wear the mask for the joy of the drama, then take it off the moment the curtain falls. You can step into a role, parent, friend, lover, teacher, and step out again without residue. This is what the Zen masters meant when they said, Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Life doesn't change, you do. You realize that enlightenment was never about escaping the world, but about seeing through it. You learn to play without being played by it. The great actor knows how to weep without sadness, to laugh without madness, to die on stage and then rise again for the encore. So too, the awakened person plays the part of being human, but behind every gesture, a deep, inner laughter bubbles, for they know the secret. It's all theater. And what a relief it is to love without clutching, to work without anxiety, to speak without self-consciousness. You find that participation in life has become effortless, because there is no you left trying to make it so. The river doesn't struggle to flow. It just follows its nature. Some will see your calm and call it detachment, but it's not detachment, it's intimacy without ownership. You no longer grasp at life, because you are life. You are the current, not the swimmer. And now you can serve, create, and share without exhaustion, because the energy that moves through you no longer leaks through the cracks of resistance. You are transparent, the divine light passes right through. You may still stumble, still forget, still feel pain, but even in the falling there's awareness of the floor, and in the pain, awareness of the sensation. Nothing is outside the dance anymore. So you return to the world, not as an exile, but as a participant who remembers the music. You speak when words arise, you are silent when silence speaks. You smile at the game, knowing it's only a dream, but what a beautiful dream it is. Alan Watts often compared this to watching a movie. When you forget it's a film, you get lost in the tragedy and thrill. But when you remember, it's a play of light and shadow, you don't stop watching. In fact, you enjoy it more. You weep and laugh even more freely, because now it's safe to feel. You can let life move through you completely. And that's what it means to return without the costume, to live as a player who knows it's a game, to engage without entanglement, to love without fear of loss. You are in the world, but no longer of it. You wear the human story lightly, like silk on the skin, beautiful, temporary, and free. In the end, what remains is what was always there, the unseen, the unsaid, the space in which everything happens. The most powerful things in life are invisible: wind, gravity, love, awareness itself. You cannot grasp them, yet without them, nothing else could exist. So when you become invisible, you have not diminished. You have simply become aligned with the very power that moves the stars and opens the flower. The ego, with all its glitter and noise, was only a mask over this silent radiance. The quieter you become, the more that radiance begins to shine, not outward as display, but inward as knowing. The world celebrates visibility, fame, recognition, the flashing of names and faces. Yet what truly sustains the world is hidden: the roots beneath the soil, the stillness beneath the sea, the breath that no one notices but that every life depends upon. So too with awakening. When you disappear from society's gaze, you rejoin the deep current of being that supports it all. You find joy not in attention, but in participation. You discover that to be unseen is to be everywhere, because when there is no me standing apart, there is only the dance itself, and you are the rhythm. This is the mystery of all spiritual life, that what we call emptiness is not nothing at all, but fullness beyond measure. The unseen is not absence, it is presence too vast to fit within sight. You become like the air, invisible, essential, free. And in this invisibility, you begin to understand what real love is. Love is not the grasping of one form for another, but the recognition that there is no distance between them. You can look at the world even at its pain, its confusion, its clumsy striving, and see it as a single great unfolding. You can smile at it tenderly, because you know that underneath all the faces and dramas, there is only the one, playing hide and seek with itself. To live from that knowing is to carry a light no eye can see, but every heart can feel. You may not appear in the world's spotlight, but you illuminate quietly by simply being what you are. And so, my friends, if you have felt yourself fading, if the world seems to look right through you, do not rush to fix it. Perhaps the universe is gently teaching you how to see without being seen, how to love without needing to be loved in return, how to give without seeking reward. Do not mistake invisibility for exile. It is initiation. It is the return to the source, to the silent pulse from which all sound is born. When you no longer demand recognition, life begins to recognize itself through you. You are not a fragment. You are the field. You are not a wave seeking the ocean. You are the ocean discovering it can wave. And when this becomes clear, the whole comedy of existence takes on a shimmering beauty. You see that everyone, even those still lost in their masks, is also the same light, playing at being separate for the sheer delight of rediscovering unity. So go on. Be invisible. Be vast. Let your life speak, not in volume, but in vibration. Let others chase their reflections. You have become the mirror itself. And remember, light is invisible until it touches something. So touch the world gently and let it shine.